The title of this series will be in the comment section below. Please consider liking and subscribing. Our story begins at 7 a.m. Our protagonist ran 10 kilometers. By 12 noon, he had endured 500 head strikes. At 5 p.m., he completed the big 3 exercises, performing 10 reps per set across 10 sets. Exhausted from repeating this routine for 14 days, our protagonist decided to resign. He recalled someone asking him if he was going insane, which he mused that perhaps going insane would have been better. As he read the system updates, a message appeared, announcing that the door to the end of the day was opening soon. The system also advised him to prepare for the end by recommending quests focused on strength exercises, cardio exercises, and learning kendo. The countdown then decreased to 2 seconds, then 1, until it hit 0. 15 days ago, all humans on Earth received a simultaneous message on their phones warning that at 1832 today in Donnogu, monsters would appear near Inwang Mountain, and that citizens in the area should evacuate immediately. The monsters then spread rapidly to Seoul, Incheon, Gurye, Daegu, Daejin, Guro, and many other cities. In a live video on Sakurella titled "The Monsters Have Really Appeared," a man, hiding behind a tree and pointing his camera at a goblin, whispered to his viewers that there was indeed a monster. However, his viewers believed it to be a hoax. The influencer asked his viewers if he should move closer since he had traveled all this way, which they agreed to without him noticing that the goblin had seen him. One viewer urged him to look behind, and soon multiple comments flooded in with the same advice. He jokingly asked his viewers if they were messing with him and insisted that he was looking. But the creature wasn't moving. Unbeknownst to him, the goblin was directly behind him. When the goblin growled, the man screamed in panic, causing our protagonist, who was watching the live stream, to jolt in shock and remove his earphones. Irritated by the surprise, Lee Ho-young, a 29-year-old, wondered why the video looked so realistic. He also noted the continuous disaster alert texts received that day, puzzling over the chaotic situation. Struggling to make a living was hard enough without tales of monsters, he thought, questioning who would believe such a thing. As he sighed over the recent surge of fake videos, he looked down to see a young monster trapped in chains, making pitiful sounds and begging for help with puppy-like tearful eyes. Despite his fear, Ho-young pretended not to see the monster and muttered about a math teacher's visit that day, but the monster's loud sounds drew his attention once more. He shook in fear, wondering if the monster was pleading for his help. Even though it tried to appear cute and desperate, it was still too terrifying for him. He stared into its teary eyes, reminding himself that he was human and it was a monster. Furthermore, he wasn't the type to show compassion to a monster. Closing his eyes tightly, he opened them again to face the creature, telling himself he couldn't assist a monster, even with those sorrowful eyes looking back at him. However, his resolve wavered when the monster showed him a family picture, seemingly indicating it had a family waiting for it at home. This gesture made him forget all his previous reminders. Subsequently, the monster offered him a silver goblin's pill, which granted him unknown abilities upon consumption. He ended up helping the monster and even received a gift from it, pondering the nature of the silver goblin's pill. He reached out to touch the system, but his hand passed through it as though it were a hologram. He scrutinized the pill, questioning who would dare consume something so suspicious. Just then, he heard the reporter shout urgent news: unknown large buildings had materialized worldwide, resembling towers, and they had lost contact with the U.S. Army that had entered one of these towers. The emergence of monsters and mysterious towers made him wonder if the apocalypse had indeed begun. Suddenly, the window of his room cracked and shattered as something outside exploded. Looking outside in confusion, he saw people running in panic. Others were stunned, staring at a massive tower that had surfaced underground, towering over the existing buildings. The reporter then frantically announced that a huge tower had also appeared in Korea. Clenching his fist, he gazed at the system once more as it displayed the effects of the silver goblin's pill. Unsure of his decision, he placed the pill in his mouth, thinking it was the only chance he'd ever get to do something as insane as this. Swallowing it, he felt a powerful surge coursing through every vein in his body. As the power spread, the system revealed that he had obtained the Sage status window, which would guide him with the highest rate of survival in his current predicament. A book suddenly appeared in his hands, causing him to stare at it in confusion. Upon opening it, He was shocked as it emitted a bright light. After reading the entire book, the system updated him. The door to the end of days was opening soon, with only 15 days remaining. It recommended a quest which he decided to follow, dedicating the next 15 days solely to exercising and preparation. However, when the system announced the opening of the end's door, he panicked, wondering if this was truly the end. When nothing drastic occurred, he mused that it was different from what he had envisioned. Then the system handed him a blunt sword and initiated the tutorial. He completed the aptitude test, and based on the data analysis, he was assigned the most suitable class. The system declared him a combat swordsman and instructed him to open the status window for more details. Overwhelmed by the amount of information, he first checked his status window: health points at 100%, magic points at 10, class as combat swordsman level 1. Lifting his blunt sword proudly, he wondered if this meant things were truly starting now. He then noticed the system outlining the conditions to clear the test. He must either survive in the forest for 6 minutes or find an exit. He thought that if it was indeed a tutorial, it should allow time to acclimate to the game before it truly began. He thought it best not to choose to run from the forest because, according to the guide, he had to hunt monsters without noticing the bush moving. Suddenly, a monster emerged from the bush, while the system announced that the tutorial was starting now. He was confused to see a small monster, a one-horned raccoon, and thought it was cuter than he had anticipated. However, he was shocked when it transformed into its monstrous form and leapt at him with sharp claws. He swung his sword forward and easily cut the raccoon in half. The system showed that he had killed the one-horned raccoon and obtained experience points. He thought it was pretty weak since it died from a strike of basic swordsmanship, and surmised that maybe it was because it was a tutorial monster. He noticed that basic swordsmanship used 2 magic points and he only had 10, which meant he could only use basic swordsmanship 5 times. He realized he needed to conserve as much magic power as possible while hunting. After killing several level 1 raccoons, he gained more experience points, increasing his level to 2. The system then explained that he would receive points every time he leveled up, which he could use to increase his stats, leaving him with 2 remaining points. He was thrilled to level up and shouted that it was perfect timing because his magic was about to be depleted. Suddenly, the system made an error, leaving him shocked and confused. It then showed that it was adjusting his level and he was back to level 1. It explained that this was due to the weight of knowledge, and as he had the sage status window, he would level up slower compared to other players. His mouth fell open in shock, and he couldn't believe there was a penalty for having the sage status window, and the level he had gained was taken from him, making him wonder when he could level up. He thought it was a ridiculous handicap and opened his status window to check, but he was confused to see that his stats could be upgraded. Shocked, he asked why he still had points and speculated that if his theory was correct, it wasn't a penalty but could be an overpowered bug-like ability. Suddenly, a raccoon appeared above him, ready to attack. He swung his sword and cut through the raccoon, gaining experience points and leveling up to 2. However, due to his sage status window skill, he was reverted to level 1. But he smiled because he anticipated this and saw that his remaining points were still accumulating. He realized that the more he leveled up, the more experience he would need to earn for the next level. So he thought it might be easier to raise his stats this way rather than leveling up the normal way. He decided to try raising his stats and figured he had 4 choices. Knowing that strength and agility were the best choices for a combat swordsman, strength for stronger attacks and agility for increased speed and reflexes, he chose to invest all 4 points into his sensitivity. He continued to hunt and killed another one-horned raccoon. He noted that the one-horned raccoons weren't as strong as one would expect from a tutorial monster, and that he could defeat them easily even with default stats. The guide advised him to utilize the entire 60-minute tutorial to kill as many monsters as possible, making him realize that the challenge was how many one-horned raccoons he could find within the given time. When he increased his sensitivity to 20, he found it much easier to locate raccoons and felt like he could sense a kind of Kai at sensitivity 20. However, he was stunned when he felt a strong aura behind him, and the system announced that he had defeated all the monsters, thus activating a hidden quest. He turned and saw a huge muscular one-horned raccoon behind him. His mission was to defeat the level 2 one-horned raccoon alpha. The raccoon alpha positioned its strong foot and leapt toward him. But fortunately, he jumped away in time, causing the raccoon Alpha to slam into the tree behind him instead. He fell to the ground but managed to roll around to face the raccoon Alpha, noticing its speed. He wondered if this was the rhino-like monster and the boss, as he watched it struggle to free its horn from the tree. Once it freed itself, it faced him as he calmed himself down. He knew this raccoon was different from the others. It charged at him again. Horn firsts. He waited for it to get a little closer, then slashed it with his sword. A system pop-up appeared, showing that he had defeated the boss and cleared the hidden quest, earning a reward of gold. He looked at the dead raccoon Alpha, now realizing he was actually level 7. The system then showed that he had completed the tutorial, and he closed his eyes to relax, not expecting the hour to feel so long. When he slowly opened his eyes, thinking it was over, he was surprised to find himself in a room filled with people, making him wonder if he had been transported to a different. The speaker in the room caught their attention, and someone welcomed them, announcing that they had successfully completed the tutorial. It was also explained that they were currently in the lobby of the tower, within the C region. He wondered what the announcement meant, and noticed 14 men and 11 women around him, making him curious if they too had finished the tutorial and been sent here. He also noticed that everyone was panicking, which seemed reasonable because the entire world had changed in just one day. He knew that if he hadn't known beforehand that the world was going to end, he would probably be panicking like them. He told himself to calm down and reassured himself that he would make it out alive. One of the women asked where they were, and to everyone's surprise, a rabbit with a human body replied that it was the Tower of the End. The woman looked down in confusion and was shocked. Kun, who was level 55, greeted everyone brightly and introduced itself as the cutie of the tower and the lower floor manager. The men were horrified because Kun had appeared out of nowhere. One man, suspecting it was just a child in a rabbit suit, asked Kum angrily if it was responsible for bringing them there. Kum sighed, guessing that this was a typical reaction. Then, someone told Kum that he had a question. He asked Kum what they were supposed to do now if it really was the end of the world, to which Kum responded with enthusiasm, stating it was a great question. Kum then informed everyone that there were 2 players and ominously told them they would be participating in a game with their lives at stake, leaving them stunned. Kun further explained that all humans on Earth were currently in that tower, and they would have to work together on each floor to climb the tower. He asked Kun if they could return to their normal lives once they reached the top of the tower, but Kun sweetly replied that he didn't know. Pressed further about the point of climbing the tower, Kun walked away, asking rhetorically if there was a need to search for meaning in things, and telling them that only death awaited those who did not climb. However, Kun paused as he walked away, remembering something, and warned them that quite a few people had already died in the tutorial. Upon hearing this, he asked himself in horror why he hadn't considered it, and realized that, although it was just a tutorial, there were surely many who couldn't even manage that. He then thought of the oldest participants and the children, denying the thought in horror. But Kun regained their attention and asked if anyone was willing to try and kill him. Kun then explained that he needed to die to get home and there was a special reward for the one who helped him. Wondering if it was a trap, he knew Kun didn't look strong on the outside. There was no way he could win against a level 55. He decided to stand back and watch for now, but then the Sage status window skill activated, guiding him to help the lower floor manager. Kun, get home. He wondered if it meant it was okay to attack the rabbit. He tightly gripped his sword, thinking that until now it had never hurt to listen to the guide. But he pondered whether it was worth doing something so conspicuous in what he should do. But he was surprised when someone told Kum he would do it, and told Kum that if he wanted to die so badly he should try killing him, making him realize that he was too late. Kum excitedly shouted that he would be able to go home. The man then grabbed his sword from his back, laughingly telling Kum not to regret it, and that he would kill him as painfully as possible. The man swung his sword at Kum, but as the sword neared Kum's head, Kum's fist, which had grown larger, appeared in the man's face, hitting him and saying he was too scary. The man's head was sent flying, causing his blood to splatter everywhere, and his head was thrown against the wall behind a woman who screamed in horror. Kun acted surprised, saying he accidentally counterattacked. The players were open-mouthed in shock and fear, while the lady next to the beheaded man screamed in fear and panic. The people ran away when they saw that the man had died, but he didn't move from his spot, wondering in horror what if it had been him who volunteered. Kumkum, who changed back into his cute form, awkwardly laughed and told everyone it was just a mistake. The guide once again popped up, instructing him to help the lower floor manager, Kumkum, get home, and Kumkum asked if there were any other volunteers, making him wonder if the guide was lying to him. Kumkum then sweetly asked them who wanted to help him get an early mark, but everyone was at the back, horrified, while he stood stunned, wondering why the guide was lying to him. At that moment, his Sage status window triggered and revealed that there are two types of Sage status windows. The first is the Sage's Eye, which gets triggered and allows him to look at the status windows of other people, and the second is the guide that occasionally sends him messages. He then looked at Kumkum and saw his status window but smiled when he understood what was happening. Kumkum sweetly told them that he wanted to go home and raised his hand. He then told Kumkum that he would do it, confident that the guide wasn't lying to him. He walked closer to Kumkum, who sweetly said that his name was Lee Ho-young and he was level 1. But he just asked Kumkum if his level was important when he was doing a good deed. Kumkum replied that he supposed not. Kumkum then excitedly told him to send him home quickly, and he grabbed his sword in response. But the lady behind him stopped him and told him that it was too dangerous, as he had just seen someone die. The others agreed and told him not to do anything reckless, but he calmly told them that it was okay and he had a plan, leaving the lady confused. He then looked at Kumkum again while telling everyone that they would see something exciting and gripped his sword tightly with both hands. Kumkum stared at him for a moment, changed form swiftly, and launched an attack on him. He waited for Kumkum's huge fist to get closer while thinking there was something strange about what Kumkum had said. He was certain there were 25 people in that space, but Kumkum had just said 24, making him wonder if it was just a simple mistake, but he realized it was not. And the horror of facing a level 55 monster and fear that it could kill them were intentional. He also figured out that the reason Kumkum said the wrong number was because, but before his thought could finish, Kumkum hit him, which caused everyone to panic and shout in fear. However, he stood still, confusing Kumkum. He then slashed Kumkum's body, knowing that the reason was that there were only 24 people in there to begin with. And then they saw that the man who had been killed by Kumkum earlier was a human hologram created by Kumkum. Kumkum, a low-rank class moderator with 0 stats and a holographic form that disappears when damaged, tells him that he was pretty good. Before vanishing, Kumkum leaves them with a saying, "For those who have courage, may the odds be ever in their favor." Kumkum then disappeared, and when he looked back in relief, he saw Kumkum change into a ball. People looked at the one stat point he picked up, realizing it was fake. The man asked him how he knew about the hologram, and he replied that coincidentally he saw the blood pass through Ki Yaezal, and her face and clothes should have been covered in blood due to the proximity, which made him suspect it was all a show. However, he thought it would be better to make up an excuse instead. Suddenly, a man arrogantly called out to him, criticizing that it was a huge waste for him to have that stat point. The man, named Kim Seung, who was level 4, also told him that he just got lucky because if he had noticed, he would have stepped up. He asked Song why he thought it would be a waste, and Song replied that the fact he was still level 1 after they had completed the tutorial meant he was either extremely weak or he hadn't killed anything, so he would likely die quickly. For the sake of mankind, Song was giving him the chance to yield the stat point to him. He looked at Song, wondering about his arrogance and whether he was serious. He then consumed the stat point in front of Song and told him that yielding wasn't a hobby of his. Song furiously told him that for a bottom feeder, he was quite greedy and asked him if he was trying to save face because of his level. He remained silent, thinking that the wisest thing to do was to avoid people like Song, but he wondered how long he would be able to keep it up. Fortunately, the announcer announced that from now on, their starting gold would be given out and explained that they could use the gold in the shop. An additional gold would be given in accordance with the number of monsters they had hunted in the tutorial. Sion told him to count himself lucky, and the announcer proceeded by telling them that in that area, the highest amount of starting gold a player had was 7,400 gold. The people were shocked to hear it and couldn't believe that one of them had that much. Sion, who received 1,300 gold, cursed in frustration and shouted that he would have performed better if he had known what was at stake. Level 4 Kim Junsun, who received 1,500 gold, replied that he didn't know who came in first, but they must be amazing. On the other hand, the recipient of the 7,400 gold was the level 1, Li Hoyang, who chose not to reveal it since one person was already envious over a mere stat point. The system announced that the shop was opening, and he knew there were 3 major ways to use gold: buying items, leveling up skills, or increasing stats. He increased his strength by 9, costing 900 gold, boosted his stamina by 6 for 600 gold, and enhanced his agility by 13 for 1,300 gold, making all his stats 20 and leaving him with 4,600 gold. Sion, visibly frustrated, questioned why leveling up skills was so expensive, prompting him to realize he should also upgrade his basic swordsmanship, which cost 1,500 gold. He then purchased clothes for 100% gold, noting that he couldn't keep wearing his gym uniform. Someone then called him from behind, and he turned to Sikei Sol, who was level, asking for advice. He questioned why she was seeking advice from a level 1. She replied that, his level aside, she was very impressed by his bravery. He noticed that Ye Zhao was a healer with the healing hand skill. Her stamina was 4, her strength and agility were 7, her sensitivity was 15, she had no remaining points, and she had 800 gold left. He asked her how much gold she currently had, and she confirmed it was 800 gold, proving her honesty and reminding him that he needed to conceal the fact that he was using a cheat key. He then asked if she liked exercising, to which she replied that she didn't mind walking. He advised that if so, her stamina stat was likely not very robust, which she agreed with. He explained that if she lacked stamina, she should invest in it because she couldn't use items effectively despite the gold she had spent. She agreed to follow his advice and thanked him. The announcer then informed them that the first floor mission would commence soon and that they should form their own 3-man parties. Additionally, players without a party would be put into a random one, and they were given 30 minutes to team up. He had anticipated a group mission, but he didn't expect it to come so soon. Junsong suggested that they share their classes since they could see each other's levels. Following Junsong's suggestion, they started to reveal their classes, and people began forming teams with their preferred players. Yisol told him that if he was willing, she would like to team up with him. With Ki Yisol as his first party member, he had no reason to refuse when a healer asked to join him. However, the responses from everyone else were the same. They apologized and told him they would think about it before joining his party. He couldn't believe they hesitated even though he had a healer and guessed that maybe they were put off by him, but he admitted that a level 1 combat swordsman wasn't very appealing. He then noticed that since players who were level 4 seemed very relaxed, everyone had already formed their parties and only a few were left. Then the announcer declared that 30 minutes were up and incomplete parties would now be filled randomly. After that, the announcer informed them that the first floor mission would commence, and they all teleported into a forest. Seong frustratingly said that he was so unlucky and expressed disbelief that he was in a party with that bottom feeder. He was also surprised that Seong, a level 4, was less popular than him and wondered if cooperation with Seong was even possible. Resolving himself to the situation, he looked up to the bright sky and swore that he would do anything to survive there. The system then showed them that their mission was to annihilate the Kabul tribe within a 12-hour time limit. Seong announced that he would wipe out the Kabul tribe himself and told the others not to get in his way. He reminded Seong that it was a team mission, but Seong dismissively called him a loser and asked why he had so much to say when he was merely riding on his coattails. Sighing, he agreed and told Seong he'd take a ride on his coattails to see how good it was, deciding to listen to Seong for now. As Seong continued walking, Seong asked why he would bother rebelling if he was just going to ride his coattails anyway, and told him he should only pull himself together when his life is threatened. But he thanked Seong for his concern, leaving Yesel silent and wordly wondering if their party would be okay. Irritated by the environment, Seong cursed about the abundance of bugs, but he knew they needed to complete their mission without trouble, so he restrained his anger. Approaching the tribe, he noticed a large number of insects due to their mountainous location and was puzzled by something he saw. Just then, Yesel called to him, asking if she was right to think that the kobold monster must be strong. He replied that it might be stronger than a one-horned raccoon, but since they were still on level 1, it should be manageable. He then advised her that they should still be on their guard because they were, after all, still in the Tower of the End, to which she cheerfully agreed. A moment later, they saw a creature with a huge build, strong six-pack abs, and muscular legs. He stared at it for a moment and realized it was a level 5 kobold, far different from the raccoons. They were hiding behind trees and bushes when Yaisol mentioned that the kobold was obviously much stronger and asked him what they should do. He suggested checking the surroundings first since there could be more kobolds around. However, Seeing suddenly emerged from hiding and confronted the confused kobold, punching it in the face while shouting that he was a coward for remaining at level 1. Both were shocked by Song's actions, but Song was proud of what he had done. The kobold growled at Song in anger, but Song merely told it that it was just holding out. Song then continued to punch the kobold relentlessly. He couldn't believe that Song had charged in so brazenly, and he hadn't expected Seong to be that stubborn. The ice all came out from hiding and shouted to Song, who was still fighting with the kobold, that she would help too. He was relieved that he hadn't sensed any other kobolds around yet and watched Seong, who had a strength of 24, damage the kobolds with hits of 15, 20 and 17 while Yezol assisted him. He admitted that Song was certainly proving his level's worth, and with Yezol's help, Song might even be able to take down the kobolds alone. However, he wondered why the damage dealt was so low compared to Song's strength and whether the kobolds had some other weakness. The Sage status window guide then popped up, showing him that kobolds are passive monsters and will not attack unless provoked, making him realize that Sion had stirred the hornet's nest unnecessarily. He then scrolled down the system window to read more, trying to stay positive, but was shocked by the next guide. Meanwhile, Sion was frustrated because he couldn't kill the kobold, which triggered his stone fist. When he punched with it, the kobold dodged in time, and he hit a tree instead. The tree then fell, striking a kobold resting behind it. A level 6 kobold peeked back at them angrily, causing him to curse in fear. It then threw the tree aside and charged toward them. Seong felt he was in big trouble and wondered what Ho Young was doing, as he wasn't helping at all. When he looked to where Ho Young was hiding, he noticed Ho Young had disappeared, making him wonder if Ho Young had really run away. The kobold raised its wooden club to attack Seong, but fortunately, Yisol slashed at the kobold just in time to divert its attention and shouted to Seong that it was dangerous. However, she then tripped on a stone and slammed to the ground. She felt the kobold behind her and, upon peeking back, was shocked to see the kobold launching its club at her. Suddenly, something appeared above the kobold, and Hoyen slashed the fruit with his sword, then attacked the kobold with it. The kobold was shocked as its skin began to bubble, and the poison spread rapidly through its body until it exploded. He dropped to the ground, and the system confirmed that he had eliminated the level 6 kobold. Sion, confused and stuttering, called him a loser, and Yaizol was relieved when she called his name. He realized that while the bugs had eaten all the fruit, the kobolds hadn't touched any, leading him to suspect something was amiss. He then figured out that the fruit was a poisonous apple, and remembered that the guide showed kobolds were vulnerable to poison. He knew then that gathering poison from the mountains and using it was the key to completing their level 1 mission. Seon clenched his teeth in anger. Behind him, he was helping Yisul stand up, asking her if she was okay, to which she replied affirmatively. He told her that he hadn't expected another kobold to be drawn there by the aggro, noting it could have been dangerous had he been a bit late. However, she assured him that he arrived just in time and thanked him because they made it. She then asked him where he was going, and just as he was about to reply, Song called him a loser and accused him of being a mere free rider. Song shouted that he had been hiding in a corner when it was actually dangerous, but after he landed a few hits on the cobbles, he just swooped in and stole the final hit. Si-hyung then walked away, muttering that he was an unethical bastard. He knew it when he saw him greedily consuming the stat points, making him wonder what the hell Se-hyung was ranting about and if Se-hyung was losing his mind. He sighed, realizing that Se-hyung's inability to read the room meant he was going to have an even harder time. A moment later, they arrived at the Kabul village. Se-hyung was striking another Kabul, reminding himself that he was Kim Se-hyung, a renowned name in the punching scene, and that a lowly monster could never stop him. He launched his fist at one of the kobolds, but then he saw Yaisol and Ho Young effortlessly eliminating another kobold, making him curse in frustration. He then peeked back at Yaisol and Ho Young, who were happily dispatching kobolds as if they were merely level 1, wondering how they were managing it so easily. One of the kobolds then struck him in the head, causing him to slam to the ground. The kobolds continuously stepped on him, causing immense pain, and he cried while covering his head and begging for someone to help. His eyes, full of tears, opened when the kobolds stopped stepping on him, and he saw the slashed kobolds explode. Shocked, he looked up and saw Hoyoung offering him a hand, telling Seyoung that he took over the coattails ride in his place for a bit, and asked how the ride was. Seyoung didn't answer for a moment, then cried in happiness like a child. He then called him his big brother, leaving him and Yisul shocked in disbelief. They then cleared the mission. End of part 1 to 4. Please leave a comment and suggestions. Subscribe for more Manhwa recap stories. Thanks for watching.